Welcome to the Level Up Lifestyle, where we tell the real stories of people who overcame and elevated. In today's episode, Mike sits down with agency owner Brandon Jones. We get to experience Brandon's entire journey to leadership, starting from an injury that changed his life's direction.
I felt a pop in my elbow and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to admit it.
To his realization that something needed to change.
I'm sitting in bed. I'm like, life has to be more than this. I cannot go back to that cubicle. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be this.
To the moment his hard work paid off.
That 1 year difference of me feeling like a failure, me feeling like I'm not successful, to a year later,
You're on stage.
I'm on stage with Keith.
All of this coming up next on the Level Up Lifestyle.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Level Up Lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sheets, and we are coming to you live from Globe Life Studios in McKinney, Texas, with our special guest of the day, Brandon Jones. Hey Brandon, how are you?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely.
So Brandon, for everyone to know, you are an agency owner.
Yes, agency owner out of Birmingham.
Out of Birmingham, Alabama. You've been with the company for how long now?
9.5 years.
9.5 years. Yep. Okay. How long have you been an agency owner?
Almost six.
Almost 6 years
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some time with the company.
Yeah.
And certainly, you've had some success. You've had a journey.
Sure.
And that's what we're going to get into here today.
Yeah.
So just what made you to who you are today, very successful in your agency in Birmingham. And what was that path that got you there? So let's jump into it. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
So born and raised where?
So I'm from LA, but not the LA you think.
Los Angeles?
That is called Lower Alabama.
Lower Alabama. I learned about that when I first came to Liberty. They said, hey, we're in LA. I'm like, oh, it's a little different.
Yeah, just a little bit different LA.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a small town just north of Mobile, the Leroy Jackson area. We have one of those caution lights, Mike, so if like blink, you've probably gone through the community I live in at this point. So
no stop sign, just the blinking yellow
it's not
light.
even a red light where we live at.
Yeah.
We just keep going.
Just think about slowing down.
It's a little caution and maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my parents, my dad was a public school teacher, teach and coach for over 25 years.
Oh, okay.
And my mother actually worked at the local paper mill. So she's done that. She's still working there now. Been there for over 30 years.
Wow.
So, growing up, Mike, and my dad coaching and teaching, I would get off school and I would immediately go to the practice field.
Yeah. Was he ever your teacher? Or
he was ever my teacher. He was my coach once I got a little bit older right there. He wouldn't coach me when I was young.
Okay.
But, he was coaching varsity football, varsity baseball. So,
at the high school.
At the high school. So my day didn't end at 3. I would go jump and I was the water boy. I was the manager. I was just being around. So my family's always been around sports. So
and this is the one high school town, right? I mean,
yes.
And how many people are in the high school?
I graduated with 65 people. So, we're talking about small.
So
very, very small. Yeah.
So small town, small school. Mm-hmm. And just like as a kid growing up, it was just sports. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, we were the family that lived at the ballpark. So my parents were very involved in the Little League. So we were the ones closing the concession stand late at night, turning off the lights. So there was a lot of late evenings. But, looking back on it, those were some of the best moments I had, in my life. And, just weekend travel ball, we kind of, it felt odd, Mike, when it was an off season. We were like all looking around like, okay,
what do we do?
Why are we not traveling? Where's the next game? So we were that family growing up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When did you start playing? It was baseball as the sport?
Baseball was a sport. Now, I ended up playing football when I was in high school, but growing up, as early, I think I signed up at 4. I think that's the earliest you could do T-ball.
Yeah.
I started playing then.
Yeah. Okay. And so when did sports kind of took off really from there? And are you thinking like, what are your aspirations as a young kid in high school?
Yeah.
In Jackson, Alabama,
man,
what you're going to do?
It was to make Major League, man. I was, watching the Braves growing up, all the Major League teams.
That's the team down there, right? Because
it's
feed
the
into
Central,
Atlanta.
Yeah, you turn on TBS. That was the game you watched right there. And, that was always my dream. My parents made a lot of sacrifices. I always had the good bat. They got me the glove, and looking back on it, I know a lot of families, didn't get all, a lot of the kids didn't have that same luxury. And, my parents made that sacrifice for me with take me to hitting coaches on the weekend. I mean, we're talking about driving 2.5 hours away.
Oh, wow.
And leading up to going to middle school and high school, sports was such a big decision for us that we actually sold our home, moved to an area with a little bit better of a school as far as athletics and all. So at 9th grade, here I am, 14 years old, about to turn 15, and I'm changing schools.
Yeah. Did your dad move to that school too?
He did not. Badly enough, he actually stayed at the previous school right there, but he had already retired from coaching at that point. He
Gotcha.
Once I kind of got to where I was playing in varsity, he didn't want to coach me. He's like, I'll coach you from
if he was like the rival school coach now for you.
Yes, yeah. So he was sitting on our side. He didn't sit on the other school. But we made a big decision. We moved to 9th grade. I think sports helped me, get those friendships a lot faster. Moving to high school is not easy.
That's hard. Yeah. I did it twice. So it's you got to reacclimate pretty quick. So sports was your segue into that?
It was a segue, and it paid off. I ended up playing football and baseball. We won 5 state championships.
Wow.
3 in football, 2 in baseball, back to back my junior and senior year. So it was worth the move. At the time, I was a little nervous, a little scared about that, but you could see the impact. We were just an ultra competitive family at that point.
What position were you playing in football and in baseball?
So in baseball, I did a little bit of everything, from catching to pitching to infield. Those were, depending on who was pitching, I kind of rotated a little bit. And then in football, I was defensive back. So, I was a safety. So,
Gotcha.
Baseball was probably my premier sport, more so than football. I enjoy football, but my size and all kind of bigger for baseball than football. I was not the biggest.
Sometimes safeties, depending on the school, that's kind of like right field, right?
Yeah,
it's like, unless we get burned 3 times. Then you got to
make the last tackle.
Right. You're saving the touchdown. That's it. Our prayers are with Brandon. Right? So.
And Brandon, we trust.
Yeah, exactly. So coming through school, so your path is like, I want to keep the sports. I want to do that and move forward.
Yeah, I remember graduating my senior year, and it was the decision: do I keep playing or do I just go to university and get a degree like a lot of other people that I graduated with? And ultimately it came down to I wasn't ready to hang it up. And I got the opportunity. A few small schools looked at me, gave us a few scholarships, and ended up playing at William Carey University, which is in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Okay.
So. Went there my freshman year, and I kind of came in, Mike, as a dual player. They needed help pitching, but also could catch and infield. And then about 2 weeks into our season, we had a lot of injuries to our pitchers. So our coach kind of looked at me at that point like, okay, I need you coming out of the bullpen regularly. And then I had a lot of success coming out of the bullpen as a freshman. Okay, now you're going to start starting. You're going to be our,
That's a big change.
You're going to start starting our midweek games. And I had a lot of success. And then next thing you know, my freshman year, I was a Friday night person, which if you're the Friday night guy, that's usually your ace. You're going against the other team's best pitcher, and it's a conference game. Yeah. So that all happened my freshman year, and that was exciting to me. I really wasn't known as a pitcher. I was more of a hitter, catcher, infielder, but, making that leap, I had a great pitching coach, and I kind of took off my freshman year.
A pitcher that can hit is also really rare.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that happens in a period of what, a month, 2 months?
It was just fast. I would say 60, 90 days, 3 months there. Yeah.
So things take off and things are going really well. And are you thinking, wow, this is gaining traction. I got a future here.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I had a great freshman year, and we get to the last game of the year. And it was actually against one of our rivals, one of our conference rivals. And I actually pitched the whole game, completed it, and I noticed something.
How many pitches is that in a complete game in college?
Well, it depends on how many strikes you throw.
Sure, right. Yeah. It's like 80, 90, 100?
I'd say anywhere from 85 to, I'd say the max 110. You really don't want to go more than that. You're
really hurt yourself.
You can long-term hurt your arm that way. And unfortunately, I didn't go over 100 pitches that game, but I felt something. I felt a pop in my elbow. And
you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed, actually. Okay. And growing up, Mike, I never really got hurt. Of course, I had bruises and I had my pulls and all, but I always kind of just hey, we'll throw some dirt on it, let's go. Right. I'm not missing a game. So coming off the field, going to dugout, there was a game 2, and so I'm getting my arm iced, and it just started like tingling, like it just didn't feel right. And I'm telling my coach, I was like, our trainer came over. I was like, I could feel some swelling there, and it just, I could tell. I was kind of ignoring it at the time. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to admit it. Yeah. And
just ignore it, maybe it goes away.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'll wake up tomorrow. I'm sure it'll start feeling better. Yeah. Well, get up the next day and it's still swollen, and that's when I go to the training room, and that's when we're like, okay, we need to go see a doctor.
Can you
about
move
this.
it at all? I mean, that's kind of like
I could, but just that throwing motion, like if I attempted to go, in a, I felt it was almost like a knife was going in my elbow, and I'm like, okay, something's not right. So we go to the doctor. And they're doing a bunch of MRIs.
The school sends you to the doctor.
Yeah, they sent it. I mean, they took care of everything for me. I'm very appreciative of that. And it was a pretty quick process. I go in and get a few scans. Like, okay, it's going to be about a day, and we'll get your, we'll see what's really going on here. Okay. It could be on extreme of Tommy John, or it could just be a pull. I'm like, well, in my head, Mike, I'm like, okay, it's not that severe. I've heard of major league pitchers. I've heard of people getting Tommy Johns, but that's not me. I'll be
really
right.
your first year of pitching.
I mean, the season's over at this point. I'll just rest. I'll have a good off season. No big deal. Well, it's about 7 a.m. the next morning. My phone starts going off. I'm in my dorm.
Just really early in college.
I'm like, in college, I'm like, is that my alarm? Like, what is going on right now? Who's dying? So I answer. I'm half asleep. He goes, Brandon, I got bad news. I'm like, okay, how bad is it? He goes, well, can you come to the field house? I'm like, yeah, I could come. So I'm getting dressed, I'm just throwing on some shorts.
You're starting to wake up now thinking,
I'm starting to wake
what?
up. And I'm like, why wouldn't they just tell me over the phone? Yeah. So I sat down with them like, well, you're going to have Tommy John surgery. It's a pretty massive tear. Matter of fact, you got bone spurs. Like, they need to get in and we need to fix this.
Oh, man.
So I'm like, okay, I'm acknowledging it at this point. And what does that mean for me? And they're like, well, it's going to be a 12 to 13 month rehab, which means you're not going to play next year.
So you're an entire year off now.
So I'm like, okay, so I'm missing my entire sophomore season. Okay. And they're like, yes. I was like, there's nothing I can do. Like, you sure I can't just like do a little extra work and get back?
Can I bunt? Or you're like, put me in as a pinch bunter?
We're going to redshirt you. We're going to take a medical red shirt and you're going to still go to school, but you're going to be a part of the team and we want you here. And we're going to get through this year and you'll come back for us year 3. So I went through the surgery. That was tough, man. It was tough to, walk to the ballpark every day and go to school and see my teammates. They're playing. They're having a lot of fun that year too. And here I am just sitting in a dugout. I felt useless. I felt like I couldn't contribute to the team,
So you're going to every game still as a red shirt?
Yeah. That was almost more painful,
Did you have to, or did you choose to do that? I
don't think I had to, but I was that kind of, I didn't want to leave my team hanging. I built a relationship with a lot of these teammates. And honestly, I kind of felt bad I wasn't out there to help them at that point, because they could have used an extra pitcher. They could have used an extra hitter, So, going through that was, I'm going from being the Friday night guy to I'm the bucket boy. We're taking batting practice and I'm just going around picking up the balls. And, that was a tough time, man. That was a tough time.
But at least, you're still showing up for the team though. And because at that moment, you probably have a couple choices on how to feel. Maybe you felt it all, right? Like, this is why me. This is totally unfair.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to go to the team. I'm like, just, and then, you made the conscious decision to go back and be a part of the team, even if you can't contribute on the field.
Yeah. So I had to give my arm time to rest, Then it was your physical therapy. So I'm doing a lot of band work. We got trainers moving my arm, trying to strengthen it up back up again. And I'll be honest with you, there's times I'm like, okay, is this it? Do I really want to go through all this? Is this worth?
It's got to be painful too, right?
It is. Because you build up scar tissue and they're having to really just loosen it up and get it back, because when they do it, they kind of wrap it up where you can't even move your arm. Like,
how long were you like immobile after the surgery?
I would say 6 months.
6 months you couldn't move your arm?
Yeah, from my brace, my wrist, and my shoulder right here. And, I'm taking summer vacations with my family, and I got at the beach, and I'm got like the plastic bag over my arm.
Yeah, they're like, hey, just hang the bag on Brandon's arm.
It looks like my arm fell off, to
Yeah.
other people, but it was just a Tommy John surgery. And, I thought about not coming back. Trust me, that kind of crept through my mind. Am I going to keep doing this? But then, I was like, I don't want it to end this way. I want it to end on my terms. I don't want an injury to say, I'm not going to, because I wasn't ready to walk away at that point.
Yeah. And so how, I'm sure the team was supportive, right? And they're obviously the trainers are helping you. And what was the sense from the teammates when you're in the dugout and,
Great support. Teammates, coaches, I think they wanted me to feel a part of something. So
they were reaching out to you in a way.
I was still traveling with them, I was still in the dugout with them, and I was still, I kind of was assistant coach that year in a sense. I coached first base a couple games right there. Yeah. All right. So didn't get anybody
just
picked
make
off.
sure the arm's not like, does he say go? What is he doing?
Yeah, right.
It's hard reading the signal with your arm immobile.
It was, I think it was a tough year, but I learned a lot about myself that year, and I really hit the gym hard. I hit my physical therapy hard, and, eventually I remember the phone call. My doctor's like, okay, you can start your throwing session, but you're only going to do like 10 feet, and it was like a ramp up, a build up from that point. But
how many months was it into before you got that call?
I would say I was 9 or 10 months.
Okay.
Almost at the year.
Yeah.
I couldn't pitch or do anything until that 12th or 13th month right there. So they used 2 or 3 months to kind of slowly kind of bring me into this so I don't put too much stress on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then what's that process look like getting back into the team?
So I come back and, at that point, season 2's over. It's the summer break. I'm actually, coming back home. So it's really just me. I'm not around my teammates. I'm around my family. And I start going back to at the time I was working out at a local high school. That was the ballpark. That was the gym. So I'm going back and I'm being able to throw. And it felt like I was starting to throw a little bit harder now. I'm like, but I don't have.
Because sometimes you hear that where like pitchers will intentionally have Tommy John surgery because they think I'm going to have to do it at some point.
Right.
Do it when it's convenient, if it can be convenient.
Right.
And you come back stronger. So you felt that way?
So that happened. Well, at the time I didn't have a radar gun on me when I'm back home. So it feels good. I'm telling my coach on the phone, like, I'm going to have a good year. Like we're
call like the police. Like, hey, can you come over here and just like, can you just tell me?
Yeah, exactly. Like, let me find the little
squad car over here and tell me what.
That would have been a good idea. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But,
go find one of those signs where it's like you're going this fast and the lights turn. You just throw at that and see what it.
So it's year 3 at that point. I head back in August and we start our fall camp. So we finally get back to the ballpark and I throw my first bullpen session, and they didn't say anything to me. They just had the guns behind me, and I finished session. I said, "Well, how was it? How'd it do?" Like, "Well, you picked up 2 or 3 miles per hour on your fastball."
Wow.
And I was like, was it worth it? I was like, that's pretty good. I'll take that. You know, so going through that pain, that suffering, and really getting after it, I'm very appreciative of doing that because I ended up coming back and being better than I was before I was hurt, and, look back on those times of quitting and not wanting to go through with the therapy, go through with sitting out a full year and just, hey, let me just be a normal college student. Let me do what they do over here, but.
Well, I think it's a little bit of foreshadowing as you get further into your story where you get this, you get this theme of, hey, something happens to you unexpected.
Yeah.
How do you react to it? And do you come back stronger? Or do you let it define you and then you just almost stay in that weak state, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like now looking back, and even at that time looking back, that there was a conscious decision of this won't define me. Yeah. I'm going to come back stronger, and it worked out. Did you feel vindicated once that happened?
I did. And I had like I said, my upbringing, my family and my parents are great, and they instilled a don't quit mentality into me. Like even when things got tough, we don't quit. We're going to push forward, and they were giving me positive support. My teammates were, my coaches were. I don't know if they were just they really believed it, and they were just uplifting me up at that moment. But it worked because that's what got me through that year, and got me to year 3 where I could come back. So, now that I missed a year, I actually had 3 extra seasons. So I actually got a 5th year in college because of that redshirt year that year. So what's funny is I kind of graduated my 4th year. So my 5th year, Mike, I was taking some golf classes.
Something just
made in that one.
Right. I was wondering, it's like, hey, we're just going to kind of loosen the course load here.
My senior year, I really just got to enjoy coming back to the ballpark, and finish that year strong. And, a lot of my major classes were already done. I was already on track to graduate. So I kind of had a easy, fun semester right there where I could have one last ride because I knew this was it. I was not getting taught by scouts. I wasn't throwing that much harder, and I wasn't tall enough, the size thing, so, just knowing that this was my last ride, I kind of got to appreciate it. And we made a long run. We were 1 game away for our World Series tournament. So we lost, but it still was the furthest we'd gone through those 4 or 5 years.
So it's a great story and kind of that little lesson through there.
Sure.
And you knew it was kind of that part was coming to an end. So what's life like after college? What's the plan?
Man, life after baseball, that's all I ever known, Mike, since
you were 4
till I graduated. I think I was 21. That was my life. I was looking forward to the season. I was, what's the schedule like for, it really was our life. And here was graduated, and I'm like, okay, what now? What do I do? So I remember, we took a family vacation, and my dad came and looked at me. He was like, okay, Brandon, enjoy these 2 weeks. But after these 2 weeks, you're getting a job. You're going to the real world. I'm not going to support you. You're not going to live rent free.
Wow.
And I appreciate that. I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I needed that push, and it was part of me was feeling sorry it was over at that point.
Yeah.
So, we're on family vacation. I started putting out my resume. I'm like, okay, well,
because you just went from your 5th year of like super senior, like it's fun playing golf, playing baseball.
That was before people actually got the extra year in college now, but I did because of an injury. And I put my resume out, and I'm like, what am I going to apply to? And I was like, well, I got a degree in finance, so let me kind of stick to that. So a lot of bank applications, and I got a phone call while I was on family vacation, like, hey, we saw it, love to bring you in for an interview. So
for a bank.
Yeah. It was actually a bank in Birmingham, matter of fact. So that'll be part of our story later on too.
Sure.
So I actually went and worked at their headquarters
in Birmingham.
In Birmingham, yes.
So you go from Hattiesburg, families in Mobile, right? Mm-hmm. Or Jackson. They're still in Jackson,
just north of Mobile,
right? And so that's another move, right? And I'm not staying close to the family, and and that's you're moving up to which is about a 2 or 3 hour drive.
Yeah, my goal. I didn't want to move back to my hometown. I wanted something a little bit more, as I mentioned, I come from a very small town, so just jobs and careers just there really wasn't anything there. So I did put my resume out there, and I got that phone call back, and I said yes. I'm like, man, they'll take me at 20, I'm 22 now. Like, nobody else is calling me right now. Let's give this thing a try. And I did it for almost 2.5 years.
So what did you do when you first started at Regions?
So when I first started, I worked in the debit and credit card fraud department, and it was interesting. It was a good first job.
So it's like people call and they were like, "Hey, I think this charge or something there."
They dispute a charge, or the car got stolen.
Crazy disputes that you remember?
I was the person that kind of filed the claims. I wasn't the investigator, but I had to work with the investigators to prove, was this really fraud, or did somebody steal this card? And man, the stories I got back from those, like, they were very interesting, So there was a little fun aspect to the job.
Yeah.
But
never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything crazy, like, I didn't really buy that. I'm like, well, maybe you did.
So that first year was just learning, and I wanted to work hard. I wanted to move up. I kind of got an entry level role. I wasn't making it hardly anything, but at 22, I didn't have to make a lot of money. It was just me at that point, So, I'm working, I'm building up at this point, but then I'm starting to get that fatigue of, okay, it's 9 to 5 every day.
What's the path, really? Was this,
where does it go? Yeah. There was no path. So every time I had my meetings with my supervisor, I'm like, okay, what more can I do? I want to move up. I want to excel. What are you looking for? Do I need to pick up the extra Saturday shift at, one of our local branches? I'll be happy to do that. And, it really wasn't, they didn't really give me a plan. It was kind of like, no, you're doing a great job. Well,
keep it up.
Yeah. Just basically say, we want you to stay right there, and they're a great bank. I don't mean that in a bad way. It was a great first job, but at that point I realized, man, I'm stuck. I'm tired of this cubicle. I'm tired of, having a few off days a year, and, because we're a bank, we got the holidays, off,
right.
But,
that's true.
At the end of the day, it just wasn't enough. Not the pay, not the career advancement opportunities. And,
and there's a lot of organizations where there just isn't upward mobility potential because of the structure.
Yeah.
Right? Just
it's
this
not
is your
clear.
Position, and these are the managers, and it's not like we can just make another manager of another department. It's all defined. So, if somebody retires or dies, then maybe there's an opportunity, but it doesn't happen that often. So
that's essentially what it was.
Yeah.
Well, if something opens up, you're going to be our first phone call. So there was nothing I could personally do, which, playing sports, I felt like I was always in control. Like I could get better. I could go to the gym. I could work a little bit harder to earn that starting spot right there. But here I'm looking like, well, it doesn't matter what I do or what I don't do. I'm not getting that phone call. Right. And honestly, it was, I was defeated at that point,
So in that moment, why did you decide? Because obviously you did to get out of there. Because a lot of people at that stage, it's a feeling of, I feel kind of defeated, but then it's an acceptance of, well, this is just how it is. This is what it is. I'm just going to stay here. So there's something burning inside of you that says, I want more. I'm going to go find something else. Like where did that come from? Or what was that thought process for you?
I had to say, I'm sitting in bed. I'm like, life has to be more than this. Like, I was that person dreading getting up on Monday to go to a job, not because I'm dreading working. It's just, I was not inspired. There was nothing.
You're just in a cubicle. Hey, my credit card got stolen. No, it didn't.
Okay,
you just,
let me file this claim real quick, and it was really boring. And I think that sports background, that drive, that I wanted more. And, that's one thing that was instilled in me. Let's go for the best. We're going to try to win, and that kind of played in my career. I'm like, well, I can't just go through all this, get a degree just to sit here, So I started saving up some money. Okay. And I was very smart with it at a young age.
That's good. Because not everybody is at that age. Yeah.
But I knew it was my way out. So I remember going to my parents and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I cannot go back to that cubicle. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be this, you know, and I've saved up enough. I'm going to resign and I'm going to take a month and I'm just going to find out what I want to do for a living. At that point, I'm like, well, I miss sports. Do I go back and teaching and coaching? Because that's what my dad did, But, I think at that point in my life, I'm like, I'm kind of burnt out on it. Baseball was from 4 to 21 years old, and I was kind of ready to turn the page. What's next at that point? So
trying to establish your professional career and what that looks like.
Exactly. So, I'm in that 30 days of just, I'm not, not working. I'm applying to a lot of positions. And that year, my dad actually retired. So he put his 25 years in and he's retired, but he's not ready to sit home. He got bored very, very quickly. So he actually got an interview with Liberty National before I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he beat me to it.
Yeah.
So Keith actually interviewed him.
Keith Mitchell. Sitting right back there looking at you, right? He's listening to the story.
And he's listening on me. That would be about right.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. Hi, Keith. I'm sure Keith is listening.
But, he went to interview first and, he walked away. He's like, Brandon, I don't think that's me, but I will say I put in a good word for you. I think you're going to get a phone call. And long story short, Keith Mitchell was actually part of our Little League coach. He coached me in baseball at 13 and 14 years old.
So you already knew him?
I knew him.
And did you know what he did?
I had no clue what he did. I just knew he showed up every day. He was my coach, and that's all I knew. I knew he had a job because he got off, and we would have a late practice, and we would go straight to it. But at 12, I didn't know what my parents. I wasn't worried about it at that time. So
kids don't think about those things.
I knew the Mitchells very early in my life, and obviously my dad knew him because of local sports and all. And he goes, I put in a good word in for Keith for you. I think he's going to give you a phone call. And he goes, yeah. And Keith's like, Brandon, really? You think he could do this? Because growing up, Mike, I was kind of more of an introvert. Like it was sports. I was not, the most bubbly person in the room. I did my work in the classroom, was racing to the ballpark, So, it was kind of, I think for Keith, he saw me as that 12, 13-year-old. He hadn't seen me in all those years, so next thing I know, I get a phone call. Well, I go into Keith's office and I see that career review. And
his office at this time, because people know Keith today.
Yeah.
And very successful agency, $7-8 million, path to $10 million a year, which is upper echelon. Out of 56 agency owner, there's 2 or 3 that do that.
Yeah.
And Keith is one of those agency owners. And we've talked in the past about this transition that Liberty National had from where they were as employee branch managers, which is probably what Keith was when you were a kid growing up, right? He was the branch manager. And if you go back and listen to Keith's episode, you'll hear his journey and what that was like. But at this stage, Keith today is doing really well. When you intersected with him, where was that agency at in that path?
He was still in Jackson. So he had not made the big move to Mobile where he really started, his agency really took off. So I remember going to his first office in Jackson. It was a very small office.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
a house, wasn't it? It was like a converted house.
It was like in a little retail shop there in Jackson. It wasn't many places you could, building wise in Jackson, but
not a lot of commercial real estate options.
Exactly. But I remember walking in, it wasn't that many people there. I mean, we're talking, 20 something at that time, nowhere near the level he is today, So, but I got to listen to him, and I think the first 30 minutes was just catching up. He wanted to know, what did I do in high school? Where have you been? So then we kind of got
about Tommy John surgery and all that.
Exactly. Went through all that. He's a big sports guy as well. So we talked more sports the first 30 minutes. And then he's like, okay, let me show you this career briefing now. So we went to a career review and he explained everything to me, and I'll be honest with you, Mike, going into the interview, I kind of accepted it just as a favor of, I'm going to get my dad off my back. And I know Keith, I respect the Mitchells, I'm not going to burn that bridge. Let me go. But I really walked into, I'm not going to do this. This is.
You're a banker.
Exactly.
I've got a degree.
Finance.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do insurance. No, that's not me. So, but I remember sitting there and I remember it's like light bulbs were going off. I'm like, when he said you control your path of promotions and career advancement, it's all based on merit based. I'm like, okay, I've never heard that before. You
didn't have that at the last place.
No, I did not have that at the last place. Talked about the income opportunity. And I mean, I wouldn't say money was my number one thing, but at that point, I'm like 24 years old, about to turn 25. I'm like, hey, 6 figures sounds pretty good to me.
Take that. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a plus. And then he hit the residual income part. And I'm like, wow, I never heard anybody when I went to a job interview talk about retirement and what's after and the legacy that can be left behind. And, so, I remember I left that day. I was like, man, I hope I get a phone call back. I just want a final interview. And I think Keith made me sweat a little bit. I think I was probably, he's like, he probably thinks I'm going to be his first phone call. I was probably his last. You
remember, I think Keith talked about, it was John David, I think, when he talked about John David's Keith's son, and he wanted to come in, and Keith made him interview.
It made him go through the whole process.
And then didn't call him back and the whole thing. And I think Keith had that same story with, when he was getting into the business as well. Yeah, because
going in,
he's passing it down.
I'm liking everything I'm hearing. I'm like, oh, he was my coach. Like, he'll hire me.
Yeah.
Well, then it's like, okay, when's that phone call coming? I started getting a little nervous, and then it came, and I went back for a final interview, and and Keith asked me, he goes, well, Brandon, what do you want out of this opportunity? If I say yes today, where do you see yourself? And I was like, well, Keith, I want your chair. I want to be an agency owner.
Yeah.
And I remember him laughing. He goes, I'm going to do everything. You can't have my chair, but I'm going to do everything in my power to help you achieve the same success I was given with this company. And I couldn't have been hired on with a better agency. The Mitchells, I played ball with John David, his son, Keith, and Morgan and Whitney and Miss Sheila. Miss Sheila she did everything for that agency in the early days. I could not have been, I'm so thankful I was hired in with the Mitchells. They are like family to me now.
Yeah. And you got there kind of, it's not just right place, right time, because obviously you've got a kind of this within you that helps you achieve your success, but you did get there as they're taking off.
Yeah.
This agency's going, you're there, you guys hire some key people, that then takes this opportunity and it just goes gangbusters there.
Yeah, timing was perfect. I think Liberty was shifting in that moment. Keith was adapting to,
Keith was running right into it.
Exactly.
Ready to go.
Not running from it,
he's running
into it, and it was a perfect timing for me to come in, and I was so excited, Mike. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to move up. And then I remember my first week. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I was a little stubborn at 24. So they handed me the script in classroom. I'm like, I got it. Like, I know how to talk to people. I'm good.
I'm a pitcher.
And then about 2 weeks in, I'm like, where did that script go again? Can y'all go over that with me real quick? Because 2 weeks in, I was not having success. I was kind of already back to, oh no, did I make a mistake? Can I do this? Is this something sustainable? Do people make, there was enough success stories.
So like 2 weeks in, the doubt's already there.
Oh yeah. I am deep into the FUDs at that point.
Yeah.
I am like, my parents are like, well, it's not too late. You can keep putting your resume out there. Is this really what you see yourself doing? It was still that doubt from them. They were supportive, but let's see how long he does this for, is this kind of a, just he's picking it up for now.
They go get it out of your system and then go back and work for another bank.
So lucky for me, there were some great people in that office, and I started listening to them. I started, okay, let's get the script out and actually learn it.
Yeah.
One thing, we do have great systems here. So once I was willing to listen to the system,
right.
Funny enough, I started having success here.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I remember, Mike, I was probably 60 days in, maybe on my third month, and Keith calls me in office. He goes, Brandon, I'm going to promote you. You're about to be a supervising agent. And I remember that was so awesome, so cool, because nobody my age was really getting a supervisor position. They were all still in entry-level roles, So I thought that was the coolest thing. And then I walk out of the office, I'm like, oh God, I'm scared. Like I got trained people are dependent on me. Like I've just figured this out. I'm not even figured this out for myself. I just done enough to get, moved up.
You just figured out how to tread water, and now you got to carry somebody through it.
I'm treading water. Now I'm going to lug somebody in the car with me. I'm going to have to coach them and mentor them, and, I kind of feel bad for my first agents. That probably was not the best version of Brandon that it is now. And I think anybody would say that, but, I grew, I learned, and, got to I remember coming out to the academies 9 years ago, and, I remember hearing about the word recruiting, and, I'm like, I went back to Keith, like, Keith, I've got to recruit. He goes, well, I've been trying to tell you that, Brandon, for the last 90 days,
Glad you finally listened, right? I'm glad you finally listened, right?
But Mike said it on stage, so,
Sometimes when the uncle says it, it's better than the parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I did work my way up, close to that year mark to become an agency director. And, me and Keith's relationship was very different from a lot of the agents because he knew my family from when I was little.
Yeah.
His family was big in sports. My family was big in sports. So, I had that mentor, I had that coach that, we could have really good conversations. And I remember a year in, I'm like, Keith, I want to become an RED. You've never had an RED before. What do I have to do to achieve that? And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, Brandon, I have no problem with that, but we got to grow. We got to open up in an office. And I was like, well, great. I'm willing to go. I'm not married. I don't have kids. Let's go. And next thing you know, we were going across the state line and we're opening up Mississippi at that point. Yeah. And that's, I think that's where my career really started taking off. We went to Open Ocean Springs. I became an RED, getting invites back. I, went into the 301 category for Leadership Academy. And then, next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call to go in the bullpen.
Yeah. Yeah. So your goal was to be an agency owner as this. I mean, it was RAD first, and then when did agency owner start to be like, I really want to do that?
Like I said in the final interview, I made my mind up. I want to be an owner one day.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to be an owner one day. And I had a lot of respect for people like Keith and a lot of others. And I didn't think, Keith made it look so easy. We'll get into that later.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
I was like, man, he's got his name on his wall. He's making great money. I wanted that. I always had an entrepreneur spirit to me. I just didn't know what I wanted to be a business owner in. After baseball, I didn't have a clue what I was passionate about. But what I found is I love helping people. I love coaching people. And walking into that agency was like the closest thing I could get to like a sports locker room where it's the teammates, it's the guys, it's the coach, it's the mentor. So, and it was competitive.
It's the culture.
It was a culture. It was competitive. Yeah. We had leaderboards every week. So, that excited me. And I didn't ever get that feeling where it was before this. So, when I got that call to come talk to you about becoming an agency owner, I was ecstatic. I'd already made up. I'm going. Like, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came in, we sat down, we talked, and eventually we settle on Charlotte.
Yeah.
Charlotte's a big part of your life, right?
Big part.
Maybe a different thought coming in than, on your way out. A little bit, but
absolutely.
And then of course timing, and we'll get into all that. So you came down to the bullpen, what was it, like late 2018 or early 2019?
I think it was 18. I believe it was 18 when I came in.
And when did you move to Charlotte to be the agency owner there?
I believe we opened May 1st of 2018.
Okay.
So to go back a step, me and my wife got married that December of 2017.
Okay.
And at the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding, it's actually went aside, we are going to go to Charlotte. And now that we get married tomorrow, we're moving 10 hours away to go to Charlotte. I don't know if her side was that thrilled about me saying that.
So you went and told them.
We literally told them at the rehearsal dinner.
This is your speech at the rehearsal dinner. Hey, thank you for being here. We are all moving away.
Thanks for coming, but we're leaving.
Guess what?
We'll win. And we're like, well, May 1, that's when we're going. And,
I never knew that. That's
so
funny.
Not only you're going to your first year of marriage, but you're about to make a huge leap. You're moving 10 hours away from your family, and I remember my parents. They were concerned, like, Brandon, are you sure? You really, I don't think they wanted to see me and obviously my new wife at the time leave, but we both wanted. We saw the opportunity. We saw what these, what the contract could be. And
you saw Keith, and you saw Keith going from where he was.
Yeah.
So where he was when he started to where he is now, he's on council and, in competition for agency owner of the year. And
so at the time it was like, yes, this is the best for our future family right here. And, we make that leap, and I think when we got to Charlotte, we're like, wow, we really did this. Like, we just moved 10 hours away from our family and our friends, and we are starting from scratch. I remember sitting in that empty office. I'm like, it's me, Caroline, and like 3 others at that point.
Yeah.
Then that's when the nerves kind of started sinking in, like, man, like I got to build this up, because you walk into Keith's office every day. It's, now it's, hundreds, at that point it was still very, very large we got to build this thing up from scratch in a new area.
There's an existing culture that you're kind of part of, and now you're completely You're the tone setter. You're everything.
Yeah. Not only in my coaching and my training, now I'm paying all the bills. So now I'm, responsible for everything. And like I said earlier, Keith made it look so easy. I used to think, man, Keith's got the best job right there. But how long he's been doing it for, he just made it look easy. Mm-hmm. So when I got in that role, when I sat behind that desk, I'm like, I had a greater appreciation for what he did when I was at his office going into that role than I did when I was at his office.
Yeah. And when I look back on this time, maybe you agree, maybe you feel different, but I felt like your trajectory was kind of on pace for a new agency.
Sure.
Things were moving probably not as fast as you wanted, but from my perspective, I felt like things were going about on pace of what you'd expect. Yeah. Not super fast, not slow.
Right.
And, those first 2 years as an agency owner is foundational. And it's a lot, people don't like necessarily, the foundation building aspect of things. It's fun to like pick out the floor and get nice, faucets and, decorate the house. But pouring the foundation is monotonous and it's tedious and it's challenging. And you're doing a good job of this.
Yeah.
And then 2019 ends and then 2020 happens.
Yes. So like you said, year one, I thought we did okay, just building up a nucleus, and finding culture, getting used to the area and knowing, when you're running.
What was the culture difference there from Mobile to Charlotte?
It was, you go from, like I said, LA, Lower Alabama to Charlotte. Charlotte's a major metro. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. now, and I think that was a shot for me and Caroline to go into a major place right there where we didn't know everybody. We didn't even know the community and all. So that first year was just getting to figure out how, about the area, about the people, and like you said, we go into 2020. And at that time, I felt like I built up some success. I've kind of gotten through a little bit of the hard part in the very beginning. And, my team at that point was starting to hit $25,000, in the field. And,
that's a good milestone as a new AO.
As a startup, that's a great milestone. Yeah. I was excited. I was on board. And then March of 2020 happens. And I remember leading up and watching the news of there's potential lockdowns and we're going to take a 2-week break, and at first it was 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, we can
I can get around 2 weeks.
My agents probably need a 2-week vacation. It's all good. We'll come back. We'll be writing. No big deal, Well, that 2 weeks never, ended, at that point. And I remember getting a phone call, my building manager's like, okay, you cannot bring your agents into the office. Like they locked down our building. Like it was that.
You can't come into the office.
I can't bring I could come in, but I couldn't bring my employees in. They called them that. I couldn't bring my agents. I couldn't bring my staff, and I'm like, okay. And I'm calling like my director's point, like, man, what am I going to do? Like, I can't even get in my office. Nobody's going to want us to come in their home right now, even if we are wearing a mask.
Because it's good. So then let's make that point. Your business model is in home. So you're not the business to business model. You're the in the home model. So your agents would come in, book appointments, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, they go out and visit people in their house, usually in the afternoon, evenings. And then Thursday they come in. You'd have a meeting, they book appointments, and then Friday, Saturday, they go out and meet people in their homes.
Yeah. So not only can we not come into the office and have call clinic, we also, people were not allowing us to come in. We were not allowed to, So I'm sitting there with Caroline, my wife. I'm like, what are we going to do? I'm hope they're figuring it out in McKinney right now. But I think a lot of the AOs were texting it back and forth, like, what's next? What does this look like? And I remember getting the phone call. Hey, I've got great news. We got a plan. I'm like, okay, I'm all ears at this point.
Yeah,
I'm like,
please tell me.
I'm one, I can't sit around my house for very long anyway. So that 2-week break felt like eternity for me, so I'm itching to get back in building mode. Cause like you said, year one and year two is so important as a startup agency. And, I remember that phone call saying, we're going to go virtual. I'm like, what do you mean? Like virtual? Like what does that mean? Well, you're still going to be able to sell policies. You're still going to meet with people, your clients, but it's going to be all done on Zoom, and your agent's going to be, since they can't come to the office, they'll be working from home. But don't worry, we got a training segment on it. We're going to get all your leadership team in, and we're going to train you how to do this. And I remember my ADs, we all logged on to Zoom, and we're hearing this.
Yeah.
And we end the meeting, and we have our own meeting. Like, what'd you think? Right, kind of deal. And I remember.
I always wondered if you guys really did that. No,
it happened. We had a second meeting over the first meeting.
All right, that one's done. Our mic's gone. Now let's talk about what we're really going to do.
We can do this, And I remember my AD was like, Brandon, I think we can. I think we can do this. I said, okay. And I said, well, it beats not doing anything, so let's give it a try. And
you guys were already meeting on Zoom when you were doing this anyway, right?
Sure. You know, I want to keep in touch with everybody through that period, when uncertainty, I didn't want to have a fallout of, they're not hearing from their owner, not hearing from their agency directors, so we still had our leadership meetings. We actually, in that 2 weeks, picked up a little book club. So we kind of stayed in touch. And then this rolled out. I'm like, okay, let's give this thing a try. I mean, we really don't, people might have thought I chose virtual at that time. I really was kind of forced into it.
Virtual chose you.
Yeah, it chose me. It chose me, and, we did it. And next thing you know, we started having success, Mike. We started growing again. Yeah. And we really had a great 2020. We practically wrote $1 million virtually, just shy of that, and at that time, nobody had done that virtually at that point.
Yeah, you're the first one at Liberty to really get any success in that market.
I tell people all the time, I figured out every way not to do it, right. So I can point you to a way to do it. But, we finished that year and, now restrictions are starting to come off now, Mike. We can go back into grocery stores. And at that point in 2020, we couldn't go test. Our agents couldn't get their permanent license because they couldn't go to testing facilities. So they issue what's called a temporary license. So
because normally the way that it would work is you would recruit somebody in. They would then have to go to a school, online or in person, right? And to study for their insurance license. Then they go to a facility, take the test, pass the test. Then that certificate gets into the home office, and then we say, okay, this person is licensed. Then we can issue them an agent number, and then you start training them.
Right.
That's the normal process. Would take 2 to 3 weeks usually, right?
Usually, yeah.
So during COVID, the testing facilities are shut down, so
they're not testing at all.
So the state said, if you say this person's good, we'll just give them a temp license, basically pass a background check. That's it.
We'll give you a temp license. Those things change. At that point, it was 6 months. They didn't know if they would have to extend that if testing facilities would start opening up. So my agency was, outside of just a few of my agency directors, we were, like I said, we were still in a newer stage. We didn't have that many permanent licensed people. Everybody in my office is a temporary license, which means they're not here permanently. And I remember the news broke of, okay, we're going to give you 30 days. The temp's going to expire. And then they've all got to test and get the permanent license.
Everybody has to test in 30 days.
And you're talking about almost 60 agents, and I think a lot of them just got scared. And next thing you know, that's when we had a big fallout. People just said, no, I'm not going to take the test. That's not, because usually you talk about that in the final interview, if they're willing to do it, if they're, if they're going to go through that process. Well, because we were kind of desperate during COVID, we were like, well, you don't have to, let's go ahead and do it now, deal. And when it came down to do it, they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And next thing you know, we had we went from 60 agents to maybe down to 10 or 15 at that point, that fast.
Not wanting to take the test, not being able to pass the test. Or not
passing the test.
Because even they're still studying, it's all virtual. There's they're not going anywhere. And that's hard to learn health law from your living room.
Exactly. Right. So, so I went through that.
And make money, right? They still have to go and sell to make money too. So it's just so hard.
So it reminded me a lot of what I went through year 2, that first adversity, that first challenge, that first pain, kind of deal in my college career. And I'm like, okay, we can hire people. We can get through this, and we did. We maintained. We never, we couldn't get back to levels we were at, but, we did move past that. And the biggest fallout happened going into year 3, was I lost an RAD. And when you do that, a couple of the other managers decided to leave as well too. So here I'm looking around, these people I felt like poured a lot into, we were in this thing together. We rallied through COVID and now they're leaving, and
did you feel at that time like things outside of your control are now having a major influence in your success?
Absolutely.
COVID, testing, all that?
I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. I think there were some outside influences and some, me learning how to be, a successful agency owner. And I think that year 1, year 2 is a learning curve right there.
It's hard enough when you can go to your office.
Yeah, exactly. It helps. So, I think, we lost some people year 3 because we didn't have that culture of they were not coming to my office every day. I didn't have the relationships with those people. And next thing you know, we go from we're writing this to, we're really not writing anything at all, and I'm going home and I'm just like, Caroline, I don't know what's happened. It was almost like I was shell shocked. I got sucker punched. It happened so fast. that we go from.
It was like 1 month. Yeah.
Yeah. I go from being on top of leaderboards to, now we're not hardly writing everything. It was a total reboot, total restart, and of course, that's when the sleepless nights come in. That's when you're staring up at 2 a.m. If it wasn't for people like my wife, like Caroline, I don't know if I wouldn't have quit. She was that positive influence saying, no, we're not going to give up. We're not going to, it's kind of like, I'm not going to let the injury take me out. I'm going to go out on my own terms. Well, I'm not going to let this determine my career, and I'm not going to give up, and she was saying that every day to me because at the time, we wasn't writing a whole lot. So everything we made, we had to pour right back into the agency. So we were not living that lavish AO lifestyle that, you dream of, and you see the Keith Mitchells, you see the Tim Knuckles, and, obviously you can, but at that point we were not feeling that, and we were feeling pretty defeated. And you
thought about going back to banking or finding something else?
Yeah, of course. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about tapping out and quitting, and,
So why didn't you? But obviously Caroline's supportive as well.
It was, the phone stops ringing, you're not really getting the phone calls from people, like you were when you're top leaderboards. And it's tough seeing the peers, that you're around, they're doing better than you. And as a competitive I am, that really hurt me. I'm like, okay, the people I respect, the people I come to agency owner meeting with, they're thriving right now, and I'm suffering. And of course I felt I had a little bit of a victim mindset of, why me? Why did year 2 have to be this? Why did I have the fallout on year 3 right here? Why did I have to go through all this? And I think what kept me going forward was, I made a promise to Caroline that this was going to better our family, this move, because it wasn't just a move for me going 10 hours away. It was a move for her. I was taken away from her family. I was taken away from her friends. And ultimately, walking home every day and seeing her, I'm like, I can't, that was, I'm not going to let a lot of people down, I'm not going to let her down.
Yeah.
And I think that's what got me, I was living a nightmare, but walking in the office every day trying to sell the dream. I was trying to be inspirational in the agency meeting. I'm trying to be inspirational in the career reviews, and really selling the opportunity, even though because of all these circumstances, I'm really living a nightmare at that point.
Yeah. So eventually you did come to a decision that something needs to change.
Yes.
Right. And this is maybe a conversation you and Keith had, I would think, or I don't know how did we get from Charlotte to Birmingham?
So it wasn't planned. I had not decided to tap out just yet. I wasn't going to quit. We were maintaining. I mean, when I say maintaining, enough to take care of some things and keep the agency running, but definitely not thriving. And we had I think it was our fall agency owner meeting, and we went through.
It was in Puerto Vallarta, right?
Yes, Puerto Vallarta. Yeah. We were, I think Keith was a speaker day 1, and I think this was day 2. And me and Keith obviously stayed in touch. He was always rooting for me, in a sense. He wanted me to, I think he knew what maybe I was capable of before I did, And, I remember being by the pool, and he goes, Brandon, I know what you're capable of. I know that you can do this, and I'd love to work with you one day. I don't know how we can work this out, but I want to see you getting back and being back the old Brandon again, and having fun. You're not having fun anymore, and
what did you think hearing this from Keith?
I was like, is he asking me to come back to be an agency director? Am I going back to work for his office? And, I was kind of upfront. I was like, well, I'm not going to give up the contract.
Yeah.
I will go back to Charlotte. I had every intentions of getting back on the plane and fighting this thing out. That's one thing some people told me, don't give up the contract. The contract is too great. And I would always support people wanting to become an agency owner. So I wasn't willing to give that up. He goes, okay. Well, I understand that, that's no big deal. And I said, well, I wouldn't, partnerships are starting to become more of a thing at that point.
Yeah.
He had partnered in with some other people, in Florida. And I said, but I would partner with you. And he goes, well, okay. He goes, are you talking about Charlotte? I said, anywhere. Well, where do you want to go? And next thing I know, we go to dinner. This is happening about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon by the pool. And about 6:30, 7 o'clock that night at dinner, he goes, all right, it's already done. It's happening.
Yeah, I want to say between that conversation and the next one, he had a conversation with Steve.
That second meeting, right?
Yeah.
So
I remember that. Yeah.
It happened. And, I think I knew it was the right decision because as we were sitting by the pool, I look over at Caroline, which is the person that's been the most supportive of me that, even when a lot of people maybe didn't believe in me or maybe gave up on me, she didn't. I look over and, it was tears of happiness. She was excited about it. She, this was a good move for her. She was getting a little bit closer back to her family and friends. We were, we had relatives. We both had relatives in Birmingham, and so she's looking at from a family standpoint of, okay, we're not giving up the contract, but we're also going to an area that we know. We're getting a little bit closer to our family and friends. And she's excited. So before I can even say what I want to do, her face said everything of, I may need to do this for her, and I knew it was a good move. I knew the area and I knew the market. I'm like, let's go with this thing. So
Birmingham's kind of like the city of new beginnings for you in a way, right? Because you're straight out of college. Here's, okay, I'm going to take this leap and go there. And now, you certainly had challenge.
Sure.
And some things out of your control, some things in your control, like you said. And, this is a chance to restart. Refresh, new beginning.
So I think that happened around October-ish, and I think we launched in Birmingham in January.
Yeah,
and
it was quick. It was a quick turnaround.
Quick, So we packed up. We moved a week before Christmas, so we spent Christmas in an unpacked house that I think we threw our Christmas tree up like a day before Christmas, something like that. It was a weird.
You finally
Christmas.
found that box, right?
Yeah, but I mean, she was still excited. I mean, she was getting closer to what she wanted, and her family and her friends, and for me as well too. And for me, it wasn't just getting closer to family. It was an opportunity for a reboot, a restart, it was a clean slate, and there was a time in my career, Mike, when somebody asked me about Charlotte, I didn't want to mention anything. I was embarrassed. How
did you feel? Did you feel like it was a failure and you're resetting?
To me, I was a failure. Yeah. To me, I feel like I let a lot of people down, let my family down, my wife. I feel like I let you and Steve down. I left, I didn't want to make Keith look bad or the Mitchells. I didn't feel like I reached my potential and what was possible there. So it's I remember going into January in Birmingham. I'm like, well, if I do good here, maybe they'll forget about Charlotte. That was my mindset, and we start, and it was a clean slate. And I got some great advice from Keith. He goes, look, we're not going to look at weekly reports. We're not going to look at the AP we write these first couple of weeks. We're going to focus on relationships and culture and hiring people. That's all I want you to focus on, Brandon, because at that point, like I said, I wasn't me anymore. It was, I'm digging in reports.
Probably wasn't fun.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. I'm aggravated because I'm not successful. And I get there and, that was, once he said that to me, it was almost like a calmness about me because I knew he was such a successful agency owner. I knew I had great backing that I could just, all right, let's relax and just be me at this point. And we started with 2 people, me and 2 others.
Back to starting with 2 people.
Yeah.
Right? Is that how it started in Charlotte?
In the office.
Yeah.
And I remember the whole first quarter, almost first 10 or 13 weeks, I'm running an agent schedule out in the field as an agency owner. And I'm like, man, you're talking about restarting? My name may be on the wall, but I am running appointments out in the field and helping train, because we just didn't have enough people. You kind of have to do those things in the very beginning. And I remember coming home late at 10 o'clock, like, man, this is rough.
I don't know about this. Right.
We're not we're not a big agency yet. I'm not seeing the money side to it, but I'm putting in all this work in the office all day. And at evening time, I'm going in the field. And, next thing you know, it hits about April and we're starting to see significant growth. I remember, I think we attended a Braves game that summer. And at that point in that summer, we had just kind of went over that 25 and that 30,000. And I remember you pulling me aside and saying, hey man, I'm proud of you. And when you told me that, that meant everything to me. That was that validation of that going through maybe one of the lowest moments of my life to that comeback, was a lot more than that setback was, and I didn't want that to be my story in Charlotte. So I'd say the first 6 months of my career in Birmingham, I didn't want to talk about Charlotte. When agents asked, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I'd spent some time up there, but now I'm an agency owner here. I didn't want them to know I was a failure up there. I didn't want them to know my struggles up there, in my eyes, and now I know it's a big part of who I am today, because I think I needed to go through that. Nobody ever wishes, to go through adversity and obstacles. just like our last guest speaker at the AO meeting, that bully was in my head, saying quit and, don't get up and go to the office today, and now it's, I think you said it's like a badge of honor for me now. I think a lot of people would have quit. I think a lot of people would have tapped out.
When did the lessons out of Charlotte start making sense to you? Was it after you got to that $20,000, $30,000 mark pretty quickly in Birmingham? You're like, okay, was it clear? Did you have this moment of clarity? Like, I really see where that was and this is. And
well, I'd had success before going to Charlotte with Keith, and, Charlotte, I had times of success, but not consistency of success. So when I went to Birmingham, I'm not gonna lie, there's still a little bit of that doubt in my head, but I'm like, okay, I've got great people around me. I've got great support. I've got family closer. I've got Keith right beside. He's partnering with me now. He's very successful. I'm just gonna relax and I'm just gonna have fun. I'm gonna build this thing from the ground up. And I remember telling those two, we had this nice new office. Like, we're gonna fill this room up one day, and they're looking at me like, has he lost his mind? Like, what do you mean? And to see that June and July happen where we have 30 plus people in the office, we're starting to move now from 25. Now we're pushing 35 and maybe in some weeks at $40,000. I think that's when the lesson hit me. It was, we're promoting so many people. Yeah, we had a great amount of promotions last year, and I think, I don't know exactly what the moment was, but I remember at some point 6 months in, I'm like, if I'd have tapped out right now, none of this is even here right now. These people are, these people are not, and I'm not going to take credit for all their success, but, somebody had to hire them,
absolutely.
That office may not even exist right now. So,
was it almost like mind blowing in a way to be like, wow, just think where you were a year ago and how dark that moment was to where you are today.
If you told me 2 years ago, hey, I'm about to do a podcast episode, like, I would have got a big laugh out of that one, like, yeah, buddy, that's a good one, so, and I remember now that first year getting invited back to, now I'm speaking on stage with Keith, about leadership development. So that 1 year difference of, me feeling like a failure, me feeling like I'm not successful, to a year later, not the next AO meeting,
you're on stage.
I'm on stage with Keith, and like I said, I've had a lot of great people, but that was the moment I'm like, okay, we're back.
Yeah. So how important to you is protecting culture? Because I think culture can almost define these two stories, right? When you talk about Charlotte, you had a certain culture, and a lot of it was virtual, and a lot of it, I'm sure you learned in a way how to run a virtual culture from the things that you did right and wrong.
A new day one,
right? Maybe you'd still be in Charlotte if you could apply those lessons.
Everything works out for a reason.
Exactly, of course.
Yeah.
And versus now today, just wildly successful in Birmingham with what you're doing there. And, how important is culture to success, and how do you protect it? How do you keep the culture where it needs to be? Because I think it's easy if you don't pay attention that it can go sideways.
Culture's everything. It is key. Told me it's the number one thing we're going to prioritize in Birmingham. Now, I'm not saying training and systems and reports, all of that have its purpose.
It's part of culture, though. It's the accountability side of culture.
But what I really mean is I have relationships with my people. They can, I'm doing one-on-ones, and it's not talking about AP. It's not talking about the script. It's talking about how do I help them achieve what they wanted this opportunity, and, it's, I want my legacy to be, how many people we promote. I want future agency owners to come from my office. I want, I promoted people to corporate, home office, in that year too. And, I wanted to make sure that, I had a relationship with them, and, they were having fun. And if you walk in my office, it's not a traditional boring insurance office. We're not doing the little golf clap. Like, the music's loud. They're having fun. They're excited about the agency meeting. Who's at the top 3 leaderboard, and just kind of creating that competitive, but also that personal relationship. Like, when we do one-on-ones, I'm like, we're not going to sit in my office. Like, let's go down to Starbucks. Let's get out of the office. Let me know, what's your wife think about this opportunity? What's going through your head right now? And I think open up and share more about my stories, and share more about, because if you see your agency owner, you think they just arrived overnight, like their success story, day one. But, they go through the pain and struggle and the adversity that I went through it.
And you're still here.
And we're still here.
And look at the success that you have. That says so much too of, okay, I was in that place. You may be in that place. I know what, you know what your life's going to be like if you leave, but this is what your life can be like if you stay.
Right.
And you've got that example.
Exactly. And I think that belief meter, just knowing of, well, he's real too. It happened to him. It can happen. If an agent's come to you struggling, that story is just, you can resonate with it. It's tough, So I think relationships and just culture are everything, man. Yeah. Like I said, we get labeled in the insurance industry, but we're in the people industry.
Absolutely, that's what it is.
We are in the people industry, and we impact people's lives every day, whether if it's taking care of a client and taking care of their death claim and making sure that their family's not hurting, or we're building relationships and promoting and developing people in our office. But either way, my interactions are going to be one of the two right there. And, we want to help people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Well, Brandon, it's quite the journey. It is really exciting to be sitting here with you sharing this, because having seen that process that you went through and that journey that you went through to where you are today. So just great job.
Thank you.
And it's exciting to have you here, and thank you for sharing the story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, we're not done. Okay. All right. Remember, here's the big part we were talking before the show. How this is like the theme of, everyone's so excited about the bobblehead.
Yeah. So I told everybody in my office, hey, I'm going to be on an episode, and they were excited. Like, wait a minute. You get the bobblehead.
Yeah.
So that tells you right there, they're listening, because you got to go to the end of the episode and see the bobblehead.
Yeah. So hello to everyone that's made it this far. Here, we're going to go to the bobblehead, right? So hopefully, maybe you can have the bobblehead at the front of your agency meeting, right?
There you go.
There.
So, they'll want to see it.
So here is your official Level Up Lifestyle bobblehead. Wow. There you go. That is Brandon Jones. Look at that.
That's right.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So you've gone through quite a bit.
Yes.
And, kind of that same representation of who you've become through those challenges and through the path that you had to walk. This is kind of representing where you are today. If you can go back to that moment, if it's in Charlotte staring up at the ceiling, if it's the Tommy John surgery, man, what's going to happen next? Just find yourself in that moment when you're at the crossroads. What do you tell yourself then based on what you know now? Man,
we tell agents this all the time, just keep coming back. The best is yet to come. Don't let anything, a lot of success is part about dealing with adversity and obstacles. And when you embrace it and just realize, you're not being punished. It's not a victim mindset, but just learn from it, we talk about failing forward right there, but I think about just coming back because the ripple effect that has now I get to share this story. I get to help so many other people that, it's a badge of honor now. So just keep coming back.
Well, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
You got it.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has inspired you on your path to success. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you soon on the Level Up Lifestyle Podcast.